This video is a follow-on from the previous one in the playlist where we're looking at Python strings and explaining what forward indexing is with respect to Python strings. And I'm just going to quickly remind you again of the range function that we have within the Python language, because this is very useful when we're manipulating strings. We'll do it with an example which we can see here. Now what we have x is assigned range, and in brackets you can see we have 10, -1 and -1. And the 10 is the start value, the -1 is the stop value, and this -1 is the step. And we're going to map this onto our schematic diagram of a function. And essentially we're going to be passing in these here to the function, and the function is going to give us this out. It's going to give us 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 all the way down to 0. Now the reason we have a 10 coming out here is because this is the start value, and then we can see we go from 10 to 9 to 8 to 7. In other words, we're going down in steps of 1. Now why is that the case? Well, this here is -1, that's the step. So when you're at 10 and you subtract 1, then obviously you end up at 9. Then you subtract 1 from 9 and you obviously have 8, and so on, all the way down to the 0. The question is, why does it stop at the 0? Well, the answer is -1 is the stop value. So if I was to take this step away from the 0, I would get -1, at which point it's reached its stop value. But it doesn't include the stop value in this here. This is an arithmetic progression and it doesn't include the stop value. So it stops, if you like, before it gets to the stop value. And in this case, as the stop value was -1, it obviously stops at 0. Let's now consider the following Python program. Here we can see the first line is saying welcome is assigned the string hello world. And the next line we actually print welcome, so hello world will be printed on the screen. And then we come on to this particular iteration here, which means we'll have a loop and we execute this inside the loop a number of times. And of course the number of times depends upon what we set up the iteration to actually do. Before I go on to talk about the iteration, I just want to quickly remind you about this print function here. What you can see is it's actually going to print out the string welcome indexed by I. But this is the bit I want to discuss at this point. This is where we make end equal to, and I'm making it equal to an empty string. Now what this does, it suppresses the line feed. It means that the output does not get printed on the next line. Now we've covered this in a previous video associated with the print function. So if you're not quite sure what this does, it's a good idea possibly to have a look at the previous video on the print function. Anyhow, getting back to the main program, when we execute this line, what we're going to get a value set up, and the value I've labeled as welcome because of course that's the identifier used in the program. What we're now going to do is to see what happens with respect to the forward indexing of this particular string, and we can see it starts at 0, goes to 1 and goes all the way up to 10. So this here is known as welcome 0, this is welcome 1, this is welcome 2. Now on this line we can see we've said for I in the range, and in brackets you can see here that I have the length of the string welcome -1. Now, the length of the string, if we look here and you count them, remember to count the spaces, is 11. So this is 11 -1, which is obviously 10. Here you can see I've got -1 as the stop value, and here I've got -1 as the step. Now, we've seen this a moment ago. We saw it when we had this, when we had 10, -1 and -1 going into the range function, and this is what we got out. We got 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, all the way down to the 0. So we know here that that's what we're going to have. We're going to have this. Now what does that mean? Well, it means I, when it first goes into the loop, is going to take up this value of 10. The next time it goes into the loop, I is going to be 9. The next time it goes into the loop, I is going to be 8. So if we now look at the runtime for this program, we're going to get this. So when this line actually executes, we'll get hello world. Now we enter this loop and I takes up the value of 10. So when we come here and we print this, this is welcome and this I is 10, so we print the D. And the D gets printed here. Then we go back round the loop, so this gets executed again, and of course on this time through, I picks up the value of 9. Consequently, 9 is selected, which chooses the L, and the L is stuck here. Then we go round the loop again, and this time obviously we pick up the 8. So this is welcome square brackets 8, which is the R, so the R gets printed here. And of course we now go round the loop the appropriate number of times, and if you look here you can see that we've effectively printed hello world backwards. And this print function has been executed 11 times, once for each of the characters that appears in this particular string here. So you can see we've used forward indexing again. We've used the notion of it going from 0 through to 10 in steps of 1, and we've effectively reversed it by actually generating this arithmetic progression here, knowing that we're going to be starting at the 10 and moving backwards through the forward indexing. That might seem a little convoluted, but we're still using forward indexing. The fact that we're kind of reversing the way in which we print things out is really not that important, because I could have manipulated the string in any particular way I wish by setting up the loop in different ways. But the important thing is to realize that we're forward indexing, and what that means, you start here at 0 and you move forward by steps of 1 to the 10. And don't get that confused with the arithmetic progressions that are actually being produced in this particular video. Of course, I could have had the arithmetic progression being 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 0 by manipulating the step here. And I'll leave that for you to do when you practice writing programs similar to this. But the key here is we've been looking at the forward indexing of strings in Python. Of course, the next videos I'm going to be looking at are going to look at how you can manipulate strings using backward indexing. Check out the supporting website for these videos, and also consider subscribing to the YouTube channel and get an automatic update every time I upload a new video. Also consider subscribing to the Google Plus circle that relates to these videos.